03, Chapter 3, Definition of a Player. As soon as I arrived at Crane High School, I joined the chorus. It didn't take long for me to gain some popularity. I was a singer, and the other kids responded well to my voice. Soon after I transferred, I met up with Jesse, Willie, and Greg. They sang too, so it wasn't long before we decided to form a group. We called ourselves Definition of a Player, DOAP for short. We hung out every day, singing, writing, and performing at Crane and Park districts. In order to perform, we needed to have outfits. As high school students, our funds were basically non-existent. We knew that we would have to get jobs if we wanted to present ourselves as a real group. Collectively, we decided that we would work at McDonald's. God was with us because we didn't even have to fill out an application. We wrote a jingle and sang it for the owner, Mrs. Milton. After we sang, all we had to do was give her our social security numbers. The next day, she had uniforms ready for us. She was an incredibly understanding boss. I mean, there were times when we would go missing for days. Very often, we would take off without notice, and she would let us come back to work. I don't think any other boss would allow that kind of inconsistency, but she would have us there, working and singing on the front line. We entered talent shows throughout the city, and we won most of them by performing songs by the groups we looked up to. We sang songs from Boyz II Men, Jodeci, and H-Town. We thought we were like the baby version of Jodeci with a Boyz II Men style of harmony. I could sing Knocking the Boots just like Dino from H-Town. After some time, Jesse and I moved in with my sister, Celestine, whom we affectionately called Peaches. Peaches always supported me. She would always be the person sitting in the front row making the most noise. It was only natural that she became the manager of DOAP. Even though she had her own children and was living in the projects, she found a way to feed us and make sure that we were taken care of. Living with Peaches was a good move for me. She believed in my talent and did what was necessary to make sure I focused on honing my craft. She took on a leadership role and quickly recruited partners. Booby, Ronald, and Lisa became her co-managers. Once our team was formed, we had more time to focus on our craft. We didn't have to worry about what we were going to wear, because Lisa and Peaches chose our outfits and Booby and Ronald paid for them. They all got together and took the music game seriously. They even created a company called Synergy. But the formation of the company brought about a host of new rules. The one that bugged me the most was no outside singing. That shit got on my nerves because I wanted to sing wherever I was. Before these new rules came into play, people could ride anywhere near our school and find us singing, but this changed it all. It wasn't long before I lost interest in DOAP. We had been doing the same shows weekend after weekend and wore the same outfits show after show. We always wore blue shorts and a white shirt with a blue stripe. I wanted a change. I needed a change. I figured Ronald and Booby felt the same as I did. Somehow, I always seemed to know when it was time to move to the next level. I talked to my group members about what I felt, but to my surprise, they were comfortable with the status quo. They told me that I should just chill out and stop trying to be the leader. The truth was, I was sick of the monotony. I had outgrown the group. I was at a point where I made it my goal to do everything possible to try and make it in the music business. To Peaches and the team's displeasure, I left the group and moved out of the house. It was time for me to break away and go solo. Chapter 4, Secular Music. My departure was probably the most difficult for Peaches. Out of everyone, she had been the most dedicated. She had taken on a motherly role and was extremely concerned about my education and my safety. Those were things she felt she could control as long as I was under her roof. And while her concerns were valid, I was determined to create something on my own. More than anything, it was a spiritual move for me. Throughout my life, I'd always had the spirit of discernment. I could see and feel things before they happened, so I followed that intuition. I quickly searched out other avenues for creative expression. I started going back and forth to the studio, watching Wildstyle produce songs for Crucial Conflict. Wildstyle was someone I looked up to. As an artist, he was the complete package. He had the looks and he was rhythmically astute. He believed in my talent. In fact, it was him that pushed me to try singing R&B. I was known for singing church songs. Now I was trying my hand at soul music. While Wildstyle and the other artists were recording, my cousin Tony was trying to get me into the booth. Before long, he helped me do just that. I went into the studio and recorded If It Takes All Night with one of Crucial Conflict's producers, Dwayne Drain, whom we called Uncle Fu. I sang, I think it's about time you stop resisting and give it all you've been missing. Tell me what I gotta do. It was the best feeling. I was finally working on my own music, recording my first single, and going to school whenever I felt like it. Shortly after recording that first single, Crucial Conflict left Uncle Fu's label and began working with Shorty Capone and Lamar Productions. They eventually formed the Raw Dope label. Wildstyle, Kilo, Cold Hard, and Never began recording with Shorty. One day, Wild took me up to the studio to sing for Shorty. From there, I became Lamar's first male R&B recording artist. Shorty Capone hooked me up with his producers, Reggie Lamb, Chuck, and Mark, and I were recording every day. Reggie Lamb was our writer and vocal producer. Nobody could put melodies together like that man. When I was in the booth, Reggie would be right there with me. He'd have his headphones on, showing me the way the song was supposed to go. As time passed, the label grew to include Crucial Conflict, Fuski, and myself. We began doing interviews with the local newspapers, and we were performing on all the local TV shows. Our music was also being played by Rick Party on WGCI, one of Chicago's largest radio stations. Rick Party really believed in me and always showed a lot of love for my music. I was so encouraged by the label's success that I decided not to go back home. I was at the studio every day. I figured I might as well live there, and that's just what I did. I made myself a pallet on the floor, right underneath a 48-track SSL board. The studio was in a sort of commercial house. I had access to the kitchen and bathroom, but it would be a while before I'd get my own room. The time I spent sleeping under the control board signaled the birth of my music career. Living in the studio was like a musical womb. Eventually, I would move into a proper room with a bed, but that time was invaluable. Shorty took care of me. He would feed me every day, buy me clothes, and try to get me to go to school. Despite his efforts, school was the last thing on my mind. I thought school was cool for someone who wanted to be a doctor or something, but I had other plans. My parents were completely unaware. The production company had assured them that I would attend school, and they trusted that I was. While in the studio, this girl named Tamika came in to do some background vocals. I could tell she liked me, but she never said anything. One day, we were sitting alone in my room in the back of the studio having conversation, and the next thing I knew, we were kissing. We kissed until my lips were swollen. Ugh, I didn't like that. After that day, I didn't want to kiss or do anything else with her. She was much too aggressive. Plus, she had a friend who I was much more interested in. She had a badass body, a pretty face, and wore this red lipstick that captivated me. I'll never forget the day Tamika introduced us. I can still hear her say, "Danny, this is Trina. Trina, this is my friend Danny." When Tamika left the room, all I could do was stare at Trina's red lips. I stared at those lips until I finally worked up the nerve to talk. "Damn, let me taste them lips," I said to her. She just looked at me like I was crazy, but I was hooked. Trina was older, much older than I was. I had just turned 15. She was a woman, and I wanted her. So I lied about my age. As cliché as it sounds, age was just a number to me. I didn't look 15, and I didn't carry myself like a kid either. I had grown up around older people and had experienced much more than people twice my age. Trina was light-skinned with long hair. She had pretty bowed legs, a flat stomach, and a smell that was mesmerizing. I wasn't about to let my age be a hindrance. Later that night, while Tamika was in the booth laying background vocals, Trina and I sat alone, flirting with each other. Before I knew it, I was kissing her. From that day on, Trina would come to the studio at least 3 or 4 times a week. After a couple of weeks, she came and spent the night with me. I was a kissing something back then. I wasn't very experienced when it came to sex. I had only been with one other girl. That night, we touched, kissed, and had the best sex. It made me feel like a grown man. It was the best thing next to singing, and by far the best studio session to date. After that night, I wanted her to come to the studio every day to see me. I even changed my schedule. All I did was the studio and Trina. Nothing else in my world mattered. Being with Trina was the first time I wanted something more than just music. After many months of daily visits, I never wanted her to go home. Before long, Trina moved in with me. Both of us were living in the studio. When we were strapped for cash, we would share an Italian beef. They came in either a 6 or a 12-inch, neither of which was enough for 2 hungry people. After putting our time in at the studio, Shorty hired Pitbull to shop for deals. With the right amount of money and Pitbull on the job, artists were almost guaranteed an in. By the time the demo was done, Pitbull had it on everybody's desk. That meant that it was time to go out to LA and do the damn thing. The only problem was I had never flown before. All I could think about were the stories I'd heard about planes being shot out of the sky. I couldn't even process how a plane actually stayed in the air. I had always traveled by bus. The airplane was new and frightening, much different than the Greyhound trips I would take with my mother. I was scared as hell, but excitement and anticipation quickly took over. I was on my way to LA. I was fulfilling my dream.